Seattle, Washington is evidently not the only place this has happened where um, the left wing movements organized on the streets by um, provincials, as well as the right wing Trump faction, armed and dangerous, both, despite being on different sides of an ideological divide that, given the presumptions, amounts to a two-ring circus with a monkey in the middle, playing game. Both of them admire Putin and set off in the direction of um, doing what he would most approve of. It's also happened in Italy, where there's a gang called the Serenza from the left and the New Dawn from the right wing have in common that they, along with the French right wing, that they admire his uh, strongman performance, his hybrid games, his narrative, I suppose you could say. So I spent part of my day trying to discuss with municipal and the county how to go about offering Amicus Curiae to government information dilemma. There's a lot of work is involved in trying to dispossess the American mainstream um, bunny farm, who stand an administrative bureaucracy behind Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan as though that they were traditionalists who did a good job in light of my research into Axis cinema and the situation from the Green Party tracing to Yoko Ono in New York's Kremlinopolis and the way black people play their mighty logic through methods of bullying and worse. And frankly, living my life has been like being in a feedback loop of a real world Godfather movie. People get killed, and then strangers come and look at me like I had something to do with it and use cues because of the master narrative that Yoko Ono hotwired into my life. Sadistic curios from a hostage childhood have become pervert memorabilia in Seattle. There doesn't seem to be anything I can do about it because I'm monkey in the middle between um, cripplingly sick, deranged, and they poisoned me in the mouth. And Michael Reagan's team with Obama. I mean, it's what the person who gave me the nerve agent called being caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, imagine if you were just a poet minding your own business who was a pacifist in Ukraine right now. You'd really be caught between a rock and a hard place. Another place to play monkey in the middle. So, what gives it? I would want to present evidence and talk about these things. Well, if you follow or backtrack um, my narrative in my blog or in my videos, one of the things you'll see is I detected a super story being told that the language has changed to reflect new developments. Um, I detected a master story that was being told in the background by semiotics in Axis cinema. Films of Japan had it, and films working with Reagan had it, and a lot of television shows had it. It was a master narrative, a semiotic master narrative about the getaway and revenge of Adolf Hitler in the two versions, Vagina Monologue or Pussy Riot, two versions Pussy Riot, that was clocked to the AIDS attack. Now, when I showed up in Seattle in 2001, I was homeless. I knew some sign language, but I hadn't been to college successfully. They didn't want to let me go to college, and there was a blackout on my editorial writing letters to the Seattle Times. So there was a great wall of skepticism about me. But when I proved to the deans at one of the community colleges that I was historically accurate about some things, tracing to D.W. Griffith, the birth of the nation, essentially the KKK got the power to reassert the old South, the antebellum South's power structure, reasserted itself after the Civil War through Hollywood, through the birth of the nation by D.W. Griffith. And then the same gang reasserted their power after World War II, helped the Axis with the Red Scare. And they were making Reagan's movies. And I showed that these movies had pro-Axis symbolism. And I even mentioned that Houdini was a factor. Errol Flynn, who had met with Hitler, had lived in Laurel Canyon with Houdini. Okay, but there were some new developments. Um, when Valieva fell into fourth place at the Beijing Olympics, I knew it was a statement because it was accompanied by this media pussy riot. And it must have been about the fourth way, I thought, Ouspensky Circle, with Kharkiv and Moscow. It was who is John Galt moment. So I went back to Ouspensky, found that in 1910 he was working with Prokofiev and Picasso. So if you really let that think in, Picasso was doing settings for Prokofiev. It explains the fourth dimensional aspect of the superstory. Now, in some of the other political and social history, social studies work I do, I've learned things like pursuing the logic came later than the development of math. Math developed in a bubble, and it was trying to figure out who started. Even must have been before Marx. I guess Malthus and zero sum games must have come into it. But who started applying math from capital gains, to the problem of human distress, meeting human needs? And I'm still working on that problem. It seems interesting, but what they've settled on is a belligerante group who line up from all sides. I mean, the Howard Zinn, for example, clearly inspired um, the Syrian girl from who came to Tacoma Community College. You when the COVID pepper virus ignited. So you have, but it goes across the board, with the right wing and the left wing, sort of a Hitler-Stalin pact to reduce leading to underpopulation. Well, my old work, I was at the Balk Medical Library in 1984, and I followed enough evidence to know that there was a two versions, placebo, right, clocked the AIDS attack, and that the Green Party was working a multicultural symbol system and making enforcement procedures around the stereotypical mythology that they had concocted. And of course, they, since their allies were the right wing, they would come on to me, like General Edward Walker came on to the people who exposed him for leading a race uprising in Mississippi. He sued the media. So naturally you get these Black Panthers who are going to sue me and create feedback loops into my private zone and so on. The Puritan stuff of the right and left alliance. But, administratively, I've tried to open doors to Amicus Curiae in the matter. And I've, don't want to just blame Ouspensky proper, because I don't know that he was actually working with D.W. Griffith. I'm still looking for information about that. Basically, I met one of his friends, Pierre Elliott, when a friend of Gurdjieff, who was a friend of Ouspensky, when Fripp invited me to Claymont, West Virginia, and showed them the tetrad was which has a cross and a diamond, 6 lines, was a two-dimensional shadow of a tetrahedron. And if you take, they were saying, use the 4 points on the diamond to express the musician, the audience, the industry, and the music. I said, well, if you take a triangle, that represents the musician, another triangle, that represents the audience, and you put them together, that represents the industry, and you have a four-sided triangle. The fourth way is the fourth dimension the music comes in from. Okay, so so I don't want to necessarily blame Ouspensky that they're using this astral plane stuff to call Lenin and Hitler Casper the friendly ghost. The people, genocide is needed to preserve Exxon's flame over Africa and save the earth from so-called overpopulation and stuff like that. I mean, Gurdjieff himself said that we shouldn't go to the moon until we protected the world. But I mean, when you ask Ouspensky, what's this diamond with a cross in the middle, he calls it the tetrad deity. That's like, okay, Ouspensky, get back in your bottle.